Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tales from the Fandom. We have a great episode with a friend of the show, Greg Allen. He's out of Charlotte, and he is part of the old gaming group that I used to be a part of up there as well. This podcast is just a little bit different because we know each other so well. It's very laid back, it's very casual, and there's a lot of stories going on. So we hit some stuff like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, and lots of talk about role-playing, and a ton of book recommendations from Greg. So that is something that is pretty cool. I also would like to remind everybody that I did set up a Patreon, patreon.com/talesfromthefandom. If you are at all interested in helping support the show, the goal for the show is only $20, which is the hosting fees each month. And not only that, we are in the process of starting 2 new podcasts. One is a podcast with my sister, Laura, who is out in Montana, and it's called Tales from the Golden Yoke. And it's going to be about her farm and creamery that's out there, and how she went from being a college student to owning a farm with cows and pigs and sheep and chickens, and starting an ice cream shop and making ice cream and selling it to stores. So that should be debuting sometime in July if all goes well. I'm also starting another podcast, which is going to be an Eberron actual play podcast using the Savage Worlds game system. And that is called Tales from the Five Nations. And that will be debuting, I'm hoping, for August. It just depends on the people playing in it. So you'll be hearing more about that on our Facebook page, Tales from the Fandom. And thank you so much. Enjoy the episode, and we will see you back next week for 2 episodes releasing on the same day, one being the 20th anniversary of Harry Potter. So have a great day or night or whenever you are listening to this, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. We are back in Charlotte, North Carolina with another friend of the show. I've never met him, which is sad to say. He got to the gaming group table that I left after I moved from Charlotte to Orlando. But he gamed with some of my good friends like Jim Ryan, whose episode has already been released, and I'd like to get a few more of those guys on from the gaming group onto the podcast. But welcome, Greg. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks. I appreciate you letting me be on here. Yeah, I agree with you. It'd be neat to get a couple of the other people from the gaming group on here. I actually met those guys when I moved. It's funny you said you moved away. I moved here from Ohio, and David Brown ended up working at Chiquita Brands, where I came here from.
Right, that's right.
And he was telling me about the gaming group, and I told him that I actually would be interested in checking that out because I used to game with a group in Ohio. And, you know, gaming is always a great thing no matter where you're at, because while you're learning a new situation or city, you could be getting to know people and then also kind of, I guess, take out your stressors in role-playing, you know, about learning new avenues. It's like 2 adventures in one, right?
Right.
So we went over to Eric's house, and I met Eric and Brian. Chris was there, Reese, and I think Mike was there. And
okay.
Also, trying to think of it, I think it was Chad. I think that was his name. There was one guy that played with us for a short bit, and then he was gone. David B was there, and I ended up playing a few games with him. The funny thing is that the first game I played with them was interesting. It was a Valsport. Chris had been running it, and we never got to finish it. It was funny. I ended up playing for the first time with them for the last time that they would play Valsport.
Oh, that's a bummer, because that was a great game setting that Chris came up with.
I know, right? And everybody keeps talking about how great it was. So, and I was really thrilled because I came up, you know, with the Draconian, and we're on these ships, and there's a pirate war going on, and all these combat, and I ended up swinging in and ended up saving David B's character. But what was funny is at the end of the session for the night, I find out that David B's character, because I'm like a paladin, I'm like a draconian, lawful good paladin. I find out his character's at the end of the night that he's an evil vampire. And I think that, I'm like, oh, that is moral conflict. Like, I'm so interested in this next session, right? Never happened. And I was like, no. But funny thing was, the very next session that we played, I ended up meeting an orc. And we get into the group, and Jim, I think, also was an orc as well.
Okay.
We both shared the same deity. So we're making camp for the night, right? We've been traveling. Things were going pretty cool. I was feeling good about, all right, second gaming session, fitting in with party here. Things are cool. And we get swarmed by rats, right? And of course, me being a new guy, like, just put my Star Trek red shirt on, they come right at me, right?
Of course.
I don't think it's great. Swarm, right? Of all things. So I'm looking to the group to help me as I turn. Now imagine, right? You're getting swarmed by rats. It's night. Orcs screaming. Things going down. You turn, and your party, instead of rushing to you, douses you with oil. And you're like, why? And then they kick you into the campfire. So you're burning, and you're screaming, and you're looking at the table of people that you are new to playing with, and you're like, you sick people. And then Jim starts healing me while I'm burning to keep me alive enough not to put out the fire, but to kill the rats while I'm burning and staying alive. And the whole time he's like, burn for your lord in iron. So I was like, all right, I can game with these guys. So ended up hanging out with them. And Reese and I bought a house in the same neighborhood. We live around the corner.
Cool.
So that's been really neat. The one thing that's been kind of surprising about the gaming group, and actually most of the people I know in North Carolina, is that I have only met like 2 people here who have played World of Warcraft out of the people I know.
Really?
Which is weird, because I'm used to like everyone I know playing at least for a bit, right?
Right.
And I think the closest I got was Eric had said he played it for a short bit for the like 30 days free, but Eric doesn't like to play for subscriptions.
Right.
He's got like this whole thing with subscriptions. He thinks that they're evil. Otherwise, nobody's played it. So it's the one thing that's killed me, because I always wanted to get the guys to play the World of Warcraft role-playing game.
Okay.
We play all these different games, right? Cause
right.
That game's insane. I don't know if you've ever looked at it, but for a role-playing system, they went all out. Like, it has every bit of depth and detail on professions that the game does.
Okay.
So you could literally build like engineers and things like that, and be working on that kind of stuff, not just role-playing and adventuring, but literally like your guys' role-playing session might be just going into a town and working on stuff. Or it's crazy, right?
Well, it's crazy that you bring up like that situation, because like Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition, when that came out, it was definitely reaching the way that they did the style was definitely more geared towards like MMO players with like actions that you could only use once per combat or once per day, and then you had to like basically like rest and you get them all back. And now you're talking about the World of Warcraft role-playing game where they're taking it from an MMO into a role-playing game.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up like that different, like D&D reached out to try to get MMO people, and then the MMO people are reaching out to try and get like the tabletop gamers.
Yep. And the thing is neither venture worked, because the World of Warcraft role-playing system because they tried to make it so much like the video game, just like it D&D 4.0, it became so heavy that the overall adoption was so small that it just didn't do well.
In the original, when the original gaming group got together, that's what we played was 4th edition. And it got to the point after, it must have been at least maybe 3 months after we started, the core rule book was basically a paperweight because they had errataed or addendumed or released new material to where it was useless. And it's so crazy.
Yeah, they edited it to death. And, you know, and that's the funny thing. And it's like, I've always been a huge, like, I don't know what the formula is that Blizzard has figured out, but they sucked me into World of Warcraft and the world of Azeroth and the plight of both the Alliance and the Horde. And to be able to roleplay that's just something I've wanted to do. The closest I've got to it was I talked to my 2 daughters that live with us here, well, now 3, but my 2 older daughters, and my wife into letting me run a session for them, right?
Right.
So it was cool, and we started out at Gadgetzan, and they were, basically I was taking them on a quest line that would take them to the Caverns of Time. And they didn't even get that far into it. I think they played for like an hour. You know, pretty good. And then Emma, she's the youngest of the 2 daughters, and they got in this little combat situation. Well, there was some loot after the combat was over, and Emma decided she wanted the staff. Well, mind you, she didn't use a staff. It wasn't even her weapon type or her class.
Right.
But her mom did. Well, she decided she was going to take it anyway. So she PvP'd her mom. She killed her mom, and out of anger, her sister killed her. So I was like, well, that pretty much is that, because you can't do a quest by yourself. So that was like the shortest lived campaign ever. Never really picked it back up or tried it after that, because I thought about it, but the more I read the system, the more I realized that this is so convoluted that very quickly it's going to be too complex to play.
Okay.
And it, like, mechanically, it just, the translation from MMO to paper, it's just too much, man. Your rounds would take so long per turn that people would become disjointed and disinterested, you know?
Right.
And that's something I couldn't want to see experience for myself for World of Warcraft, because that goes into my geeky, you know, because I started out with the RTS, played all 3 of those. Frozen Throne was my favorite. World of Warcraft came out. I originally hated it. I was into City of Heroes at the time.
Yeah, and jumping in, I've never played World of Warcraft.
Oh, really?
I played Warcraft 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I missed all the MMOs, like EverQuest and all that. I did play Star Wars Galaxies for about 2 or 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And then, from then, after that, I think at that point, I moved to Japan to teach. So I didn't do any further, there's never any, MMOs ever after that. So all my friends play World of Warcraft, or have played World of Warcraft at one time or another, but it's just crazy to have missed so much. And it's crazy that there are people now living that have no idea that Warcraft started with, a strategy type, role-playing type game.
Yeah, totally. And I'm really jealous, though, that you've been to Japan. I've always wanted to go there. I was really stoked when I heard they had that life-size Gundam there for a while. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I think they're taking it down now.
Yeah, they are. But, man, it's like That's so cool that they do stuff like that. I wish we did things like that here. That'd be cool, like a life-size Battle Master.
So you were playing City of Heroes.
Yes. So I was playing City of Heroes, and my buddy Rick got all excited, and he stopped by my house. And he was like, hey, did you hear they're coming out with World of Warcraft? I was like, what is that, the next RTS for, Warcraft?
Right.
He's like, no, it's going to be an MMO. And I'm like, an MMO? And he's like, yeah, just like City of Heroes. It's like, what? So I tried the beta, and I hated it. It was just too cartoony for me. The style just didn't grab me. And I think it was mainly because at the time I was more into, coming off of Battletech and things like that, and Mech-Con Z and Star Wars. Going to something cartoony just was kind of in a different feel for me.
Right.
So I rejected it. And after it eventually got out of beta and came out officially, my buddy Rick wanted me to play so bad that he showed up at my house with a box he bought for me. Wouldn't leave me alone until I installed it. And I logged in, and it's been 12 years. And I've been playing that damn game. I've quit a couple times, but I always go back.
That's what I was going to ask. You've quit and you've come back, so what is the allure of it? What's the siren song for World of Warcraft for you?
The lore. I'm totally smitten. Not to pun the name of the war chief, that Green Jesus, the greatest one that there has ever been for the Horde, but I am a thrall to the lore. I have all the books, I have the atlases, the story of the Burning Legion, the Titans, and three brothers that fell, two to fell the darkness and chased the third across the universe. The plight of the Draenei, which goes to the orcs' homeland and changes peaceful shamanistic beings to, warlocks and being betrayed of their own people, and then leading through betrayal of another planet, to Azeroth and the different races and the lore and the deities, and it's just amazing. It's just detailed, and it's ever much as epic to me as Lord of the Rings is, and to other people.
Okay.
The Wheel of Time, things like that. I love reading the books. Like, we read them at night to even our baby. For the last hour before she goes to bed, I'll sit there and play with her. My wife reads the World of Warcraft books. Right now we're reading The Well of Eternity, Book 1. So it's neat. It's definitely infectious for our family. There is not a single child in our house or relative that we have, pretty much, except for maybe my mom, that has not played. Made some good friendships through it. I fell in love with my wife in it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd moved to Middletown, Ohio, met these guys that lived above me, and, no, they lived below me, and, they played WoW, and I played WoW, and we started hanging out and talking. Well, I happened to catch a glimpse of this woman on my buddy's Facebook page. I was like, who's that? And they kind of told me about her and everything, and so I got talking to her, and I kind of got her to check out WoW, and because I wasn't really a big talker on Facebook.
Right. And
it was funny how I got her to talk to me, because I sent her a message that said, a guy walks up to you and hands you a rubber duck. That was the subject line. I don't know. I just figured, if anybody's going to read something, they'll read that, right? So
right.
We ended up playing WoW together, and we spent all this time just, like, you would literally in-game, it sounds stupid, but we'd chill on a dock and just talk and watch the sunset in-game. And we hadn't even met in person yet. We did that for a while, and then eventually decided to meet in person, and it's been 10 years now, and we've been happy, and it's awesome. So,
but that's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Blizzard stuff. I love it. Overwatch, World of Warcraft, Diablo 3. I've play it all. Hearthstone.
So with World of Warcraft, is there a certain like class or race that you prefer over the other? Like, are you Horde? Are you Alliance? Like, or do you like do both? Or are you one of the people that have like multiple characters and accounts and all the craziness that goes along with it?
So I do have multiple characters, but they are all and always will be for the Horde.
Okay.
I am a geek about the Horde to the point where I have literally caught myself a couple times. It's embarrassing to say, but been out in public, pull up next to a car, and they get an Alliance sticker, and I will literally yell for the Horde at them. And it's funny because they usually yell for the Alliance back, and we went to a Renfest, and we had a car pull up next to us because I got a Horde sticker on my car, and they yelled at us for the Alliance.
That's awesome.
My favorite race is Orc. Tauren would be right after that. Favorite class is Death Knight and Shaman. Love my Death Knight. It's like a evil paladin, pretty much.
Okay.
So Death Knights basically were Forsaken. They were people who fell to the Lich King and were raised as ghouls and Death Knights of his army. Death Knights were originally warlocks. A lot of people don't know this. They were originally, the first Death Knights were orcs that came from their home world, Draenor, to Azeroth, and they were literally slain by the Lich King and converted from warlocks over to Death Knights. And once the Scourge gained their own free will back through Sylvanas, they basically had nowhere else to go or anything to do, but they still had all their powers, so they're pretty cool. Things are a little different now, though, as far as WoW goes. I would have been interested to play a Death Knight back in vanilla WoW, because I played a Warlock, a Forsaken Warlock.
Okay.
And I loved him, but I hated Paladins, because back then, Paladins got bonuses for killing undead. And back then, you and I played on a PvP server, so I'd be out doing my thing, and some human would see me, and of course, because he's a Paladin, he's got to screw with the Forsaken. And so we would get into a fight, and you'd work your butt off, and you'd get them down to a sliver. You know that next Shadow Bolt's just going to drop them, right? Maybe that next tick on the dot. And then they bubble. Boop. A little shield goes up around them, and nothing hits them. And then they hearth, and they escape. It was so frustrating. And a Death Knight would have totally balanced that out with, like, Death Grip. So I wished I could have got to play them back then. That would have been cool. These days, we're actually not even playing World of Warcraft anymore. I need to take a break. And we've been playing Guild Wars 2.
That's another one that's been around for a while.
Yes, it has. I'm really smitten with it right now. It's a beautiful, amazing, well-polished game. I'm really surprised it's not bigger than it is. I mean, it's got a following, but it's like this secret little dirty MMO secret following out there, because you don't see a lot on it. I mean, they have a beautiful wiki. They've got, a great online manual you can search. The game itself, the artwork in it's beautiful. The gameplay is beautiful. The professions, the mechanics. It's an amazing game. But yet, there's like nothing out there for it. It's crazy. It's like this weird side alley cult game you find that just, because everywhere you go in the game, there is no lack of people. I mean, it is packed. My wife and I were running around tonight before the podcast, and we're sitting there running around, and all of a sudden we come across this breach of a hill, and there is just like a plethora of people. Like, I'm talking 50 people, dude. And there's a commander. You can basically create open world raids with them.
Okay.
It's a player. You work to earn enough gold, and you buy a book for being a commander, and then you have to do these line of objectives to unlock it, and then you could basically create open world squads. And you get privileges. So this guy's leading around this group, and they're just killing world event after world event bosses. So we just jumped in, right? And it was fun. It was amazing. It reminded me of like the old 40-man raids in WoW. So we've been living through that and learning the new lore there.
Okay.
But yeah, it's fun. I like the fantasy games, just because of the fact that, I don't know. It's kind of like I like the TV show Vikings. You know, I've always had that whole wonderment of how would I have done back then? You know what I mean? How would I have held up under, proving my own mettle? So, I love those things. So, it was really cool. I remember a couple of years back, I don't know if you ever saw it, there was, over in Europe, there was a TV show on BBC, where they were actually doing live reenactments, but their weapons were blunted and everything, but they were massive. Like, people were building up armies to do large-scale battles.
No, I don't think I saw that.
Yeah, and they ended up dropping it, and it didn't end up happening because a couple people got hurt, so...
Okay.
But, come on, you putting two armies together, medieval weapons...
Something's bound to happen.
An artificial limb at some point. I'm just saying. I mean, doesn't require a lot of heavy metal in the brain to think that one out. But I still would have loved to seen it. It would have been amazing.
Right.
It's like, did you ever watch that show Deadliest Warrior?
Yes.
Man, I love that show. I love history shows like that where they take statistics. It's
Yep.
kind of like watching that show. I felt like, I don't know. It kind of is like an envisionment of how you feel when you're watching you go through the process. If you could look at yourself in third person as you're going through character creation on a role-playing character, like
right.
making a D&D character, you're sitting there, you're thinking about these things, right? And you're lining up, how would this guy fare? What would this configuration do? Is this really how I want to go? And what's going to give my guy the best chances of survival? And so watching that show and watching them break down the statistics and then, visually get to see it, it's just kind of cool. So I kind of fell into that show right off. That was a great show. I mean, obviously you have, I'm looking at their episode list here, and it's like Viking versus Samurai, Yakuza versus Mafia, the Shaolin Monk versus Maori Warrior, and of course, I think, I don't see that they ever did, like, Pirate versus Ninja. There's Pirate versus Knight and, Spartan versus Ninja. Yeah, I don't think they ever did the Pirate versus Ninja, which would be...
And it looks like I missed, the entire Season 3, because I don't recognize any of those episodes.
Wasn't there a game, Pirates versus Ninjas?
I think so.
Because if I remember right, didn't they, in the Gamers... Do you ever watch the Gamers series?
I think I watched maybe if it was a movie, I watched the first one maybe.
Yeah, there are 3 movies. I think it was the second one where they actually had a scene where they were playing that game and they had actual pirates and ninjas running around the office, and then they cut to the board the people were thinking in their heads.
Right.
But that was funny. But yeah, man. But yeah, I mean, this World of Warcraft has been 12 years of my life, and I don't have as much time for it these days, which is why I kind of wanted to take a break from it, just because, well, yeah, I work at Microsoft these days, so I'm pretty busy in that, and having a baby.
Right.
Kind of need to be able to have a game where I'm not paying a monthly subscription for and not playing.
Right.
Because it's money I could put into other things, like buying gems, my new obsession, and buying skins for my characters in Guild Wars. So that didn't help out too much.
With Guild Wars, it still sticks to, is it still a fantasy game, or is it more like fantasy sci-fi? Is it a fantasy sci-fi blend?
No, it's fantasy.
Okay.
Strictly medieval style fantasy. It does have some, I would have to say, actually, it's got a little bit of a sci-fi touch to it, because you do have steampunk elements in it, because you're engineers.
Okay.
I have a human engineer. He totally is steampunk. I drop these turrets down. They have cranks and gears on them, and they make loud steam noises. And You know, I've got these goggles on, and you know, kind of, yeah, it's got that feel to it, but it's kind of, you've got, well, no, it's got sci-fi too, because you got the Asura. That's right too, because they make portals that look like Stargate portals.
Okay.
Stargate, I love that show. But they have all this, like, they have magic, mesmers, and illusionists, but they also have sciences. So you have that. So I guess it is kind of a mashup, because then you've got, like, the Shar, they make war machines, and then you got plant people. What are they called? The Savari? I think they're Savari, yeah. Those are really interesting, and then you have Norn, which are like Vikings.
Okay.
So the Norn are really cool. But I mean, there's only 5 races, but it's a fun game. I actually think that it would be an interesting one to get seen turned into a movie, like Warcraft was. Warcraft, I thought, did good as a movie. World of Warcraft.
Okay.
I just don't think a lot of people were expecting the serious tone to it. They were expecting more cartoony. Like,
you know what cracked me up is that trailer dropped, and I had no clue that they were even making a World of Warcraft movie.
Oh, really?
I had not heard anything about a World of Warcraft movie until I saw the trailer, and I was like, they made a movie about World of Warcraft.
Yeah. They did a lot of justice in that movie. There were some subtle changes, but they did a lot of justice to the lore. Especially when Durotan, which is the leader of the Frostwolf clan, faces Gul'dan, because Gul'dan basically, they didn't show all of the backstory in the movie, but Gul'dan had betrayed his people. He basically was power hungry, and he had come to realize what they had all thought, the shamanistic orc, was spirits, because there's this mountain that they lived at the base of, and in the mountain there was a cave with pools of water that would glow, and then when they go in there, they would actually be able to talk to the spirits of their ancestors. They could see them. And what they didn't know was in the heart of that ship, or that mountain, was an old relic spaceship that the Draenei came there on. And at the heart of it was an alien race that is made of energy, and it was still alive. And it was the reason their ancestor spirits were coming to talk to them. Well, the spirits started basically getting the orcs to believe that their neighbors that they shared their planet with, the Draenei, were deceivers and evil. And so they were starting to have wars. Well, Gul'dan figured out that it was actually a manipulation by this race called the Burning Legion. And he traded his whole entire race for power to get them to be enslaved. And Durotan was the only one in the Frostwolf clans who stood up against it. They refused to be subjected to the demon blood. And when he faced Gul'dan, Gul'dan drained him of his life essence right in front of everybody in a fight, and showed the fell energies. And the orcs found it to be disgusting and impure. So the movie did a really good job. I just think that people going into it, the hardcore World of Warcraft fans, the lore fans, loved it.
Right.
The people like my wife couldn't get into it. She loves World of Warcraft. She's played for almost as long as I have, but it was too serious. She's more in love with the cartoony aspect,
Right.
So there's that. And I think that there's been some good translations of movies in the last couple of years. John Wick, I think, was a great translation. I can't wait to see John Wick 2. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I can't wait to see. Deadpool, I loved it. It was amazing. So, and I hope that they come out with another World of Warcraft movie. I think it would be great if they did like the Lich King. That would be great. I mean, the story of Arthas, who's the greatest human paladin that there was, basically converted into darkness, slaying his own father. You know, it's a great story. You know, Jaina Proudmoore, the love of his life, betrayed and has to help kill him and calling a Strath home. That would be amazing. But, you know, but that's the thing is I'm a geek about fantasy, you know. I play Magic the Gathering. It's something my wife and I both enjoy. And I played some with Reese. I actually got him to play some Magic the Gathering, which was interesting. And he did pretty good. He's never really played those kind of games.
Right.
But when we were trying to figure out what to do on Fridays and keep gaming night going at my place, we were trying to figure out different games to play because it's kind of hard to role play with just two people.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, so we tried looking at meetups and things like that, but, you know, it's not really worked out. But that's why I've kind of gotten back into the MMO, and I just needed a break from WoW, so because I need that tabletop feel, man. There's just something about it, you know what I mean? And when you don't have it, it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat where once I left the group and moved down here, I haven't really been at a game since 2011, give or take.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's tough because, like, all my gaming books are in boxes, and I want that outlet, but between, you know, everyday life of work and kids and school and homework and house maintenance and everything else, it's like finding time to do it and then finding a group to do it with. It is at points, gaming is one of the most accessible things that you can get into until you find an area where the groups are already kind of, you know, closed off.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when we had started the group and Chris had wanted to join in, and he kind of had like a trial session or two with us to see how everyone liked him before we were like, okay, yeah, you can like join the group permanently.
Now, is this back at the church or?
This is, I think Chris was at, yeah, Chris had to have been at the church at one point.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Chris was at the church before we moved over to Eric's place. And I mean, we talked about it on Jim's podcast about, you know, okay, everyone, we're going to meet up to play Dungeons and Dragons at a church. It's just one of those things that you don't ever expect for you to, like, say it, let alone actually do it.
Yeah, that's like hearing it is about as the equivalent of imagining actually pulling into a church parking lot and on the sign have it say "Welcome D&D Night Players." You know, it's not something you'd ever fathom you'd hear in a sentence.
Absolutely, but I mean, it created wonderful memories.
Oh yeah,
to say the least.
Well, and that's the thing is the best memories I have in gaming. You know, I've had good memories with video gaming. Don't get me wrong. I've had a lot of good social wins and fun there. But, like, the best, like, story moments, camaraderie, you know, that teen kind of, we just did that kind of thing, or epic adventure, has been tabletop role-playing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Car Wars. There was a great one there with the guys I used to play with in Ohio, and I don't know, have you ever played Car Wars?
I haven't, but I've heard about it, and it sounds like a really cool game.
Yeah, it's awesome. Basically, you're all clones. So you have these like little weird belly buttons, and you get an imprint when you get hired on by a corporation, and they take a copy of you, basically. And you go out and you race these dangerous courses, and there's a lot of competition. So, you know, you get killed, you just get cloned. So, anyway, my guy was a mechanic who was also kind of a chemist. Well, one of the rival corporations that we were racing against was playing some dirty pool on the track, so I thought I'd try to even the odds. So I tried to roleplay out and make this chemical bomb that I was going to put in the ventilation system that was supposed to go to the bay next to ours, which is where their crew was. Well, I really, really, really rolled bad. and did not calculate the chemicals right. I ended up killing half the audience in the stands and got shot to death by security. That didn't go well, so I got cloned. Then I had where I rolled really bad where I was trying to throw a grenade and a fight in another pit garage, and it hit I rolled a 1, so basically what happened was I dropped it, but we creatively said it hit the railing and it bounced backwards.
Okay.
So I had 2 chances to try to make a save to get out of there, right? Nope, I failed them both. Next clone. So, in moments like that, I had, the group basically had this saying for a long time where they were like, you're never going to get paid, man. You're never going to get paid. Because I always died,
Right.
And that was my whole thing. Well, another memorable moment was I played Star Wars, the D20.
Okay.
And
played it.
Yeah, it was great. Well, I talked to Derek, who is our GM. He's this awesome Spanish teacher at Sinclair Community College in Ohio. And that's, he's one of the first people I knew down there other than Jim Topa for playing. So I pulled him aside one night and I said, because in D20 Star Wars, if you went dark side, your character's gone, right?
Right.
So I wanted to know what it was like if it didn't go away. So breaking, in a way, the code of ethics when it comes to GMing, Derek and I had this conversation. He decided to go ahead and go along with me because I kind of sweetened the pot and I said, not only can I pull off a sacrifice of a Jedi, I'm going to turn 2 other players into my helpers and they won't know it. And by the end of the campaign, I had lied and schemed my way and coerced the plot to a specific planet where we went down to the core, and I was going to unlock the 7th Sith power, and I had to sacrifice a Jedi right there at the core. So we get down there under this guise that I had just schemed and webbed and plotted, and I had been talking to Liz and Mike Bungard, and independently, in-game and out-of-game, right, doing these little things, this little chess maneuvering. So both of them were signed on and committed to help me, but neither of them knew about each other. So we get down there, and I end up making the roll successfully, and I sacrifice by running Jim Topa's character through with my lightsaber. Toss him over the side. Everybody starts to come at me. Mike and Liz at the same time turn to defend me. And then they realize halfway in the battle, like, what are you doing? No, what are you doing? So I've got the 7th power. I'm on the way out. They're down there fighting each other, and I'm leaving.
Right.
So Liz is literally like the last person left alive. She just, every game we played, Liz was like a hardcore battle chick, dude. She just always was dropping stuff. So I'm on the way out. Caverns are coming down. Everybody's dead. People are confused. She takes every force point she has, and she makes the roll and throws her lightsaber, and it freaking beheads me. So I die. So I still don't get paid. But she died too. I had really learned a lesson, though, that session, because I kind of made some people mad who had characters for years.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a big lesson. It was a big lesson. And I think, in the end, that's truly what Derek was trying to teach me, and which is why he let me do that. And I think that lesson really helped me fit into a new gaming group here and helped me build some successful friendships. So if Derek ever hears this, thank you, sir. But those are the moments that you miss when you don't get to play, right? After a while, you think about it and you wanna play. So it's like that's the one thing that kind of stinks about not having a gaming group here anymore. So we pick up the slack, right? We find other outlets for the fantasy like MMOs, and watching TV shows like Dark Matter and Killjoys and The Magicians and, you know, Walking Dead, and you read fiction books and watch movies. But inevitably, we all secretly hope inside someday, somewhere, we will hear the sound of those dice rolling on a table and the friendship laughter around it.
Absolutely.
Because that's awesome.
Now, you just said you're into a lot of different TV shows and books or something. So one of the questions I always like to ask my guests when they have something that comes up is, what's one thing, either a book or a TV show, a movie, that you would recommend somebody get into? That, like, you know, you meet somebody, you hit it off, and you're like, hey, you need to watch or you need to read this.
I would have to say, if anybody can read, there's a couple books that I would go with. 1, Watership Down.
Okay.
2, the original Alien book, previous of the movie. It was an amazing book for its time. 3, I would say read the Lord of the Rings series. Start with The Hobbit, though, because it's amazing. I love it.
And it's a quick read.
Yes.
I think I can read. I think the last time I read it only took me like 2 or 3 hours to get through the whole book.
Okay. And I think everybody should at least read a Star Wars book. Doesn't matter which one, just one. It's got a great style to it. I like Star Wars books. So.
Do you have a preference on setting in the Star Wars books? Because now, you know, with the transition to Disney, they put all of the books that, you know, you and I kind of grew up with into, like, the Legends universe, and now they have a new set of books that's all canon built into, like, tied into, like, Episode 7 or Rogue One and and whatnot. So, like, is there a book series that you, like, for me, if I was suggesting a Star Wars book to read, I would recommend anything, either the Timothy Zahn trilogy or the X-Wing Rogue Squadron series.
What was the one? There was the one where Luke wore his father's armor for a while. I cannot think of the name of that book. Because it has been forever since I've read them.
Gotcha.
So to me, they're mainly memories of pieces and moments.
Right.
I'm trying, I could see the cover in my head, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. I'm failing you on this one, man.
That's okay.
So, I love Star Wars, but the books, I just want, you know, when I say I think everybody should read one, it's because of this conversation exactly. Either you're going to follow into it and you're going to know all the series like you, or you're going to enjoy the books. Like, I'm a person that reads the Star Wars books. Like, if I come across one at a used bookstore, I'm going to pick it up and read it. If I see one in a library, I'll pick it up and read it. But do I follow the whole series? No. But I feel like if somebody didn't pick one up and at least read one, they wouldn't know about that whole option. And to me, I think those books are written well enough. That was a hard sentence. That they're at least worth a read to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like the Fire and Ice series. It's not for everyone. Even J.R. Tolkien's not for everyone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some people, they try to read that and they're like, ooh, that's, you know. But if you never at least read one, how do you know?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's that trying it. You know, don't treat literary objects or books or stories or adventures like food. You know, I don't like that kind of food. I'm not going to try it. At least try it.
Right.
Because you never know that the adventure you may open up. Like, I like the whole Hunger Games series. I didn't think I was gonna, but I happened to look at a book. I don't even remember where the first book was at. Somebody had it. And I was checking it out, and all I remember was sitting down and taking a glance at it, and the next thing I know, I could not put them down. Was it Chris? Yeah, it was Chris. And I read every single one and loved them. Hated the movies, but loved the book. You know, Ender's Game, great book. Hated the movie. The Maze Runners.
Yep.
That was great. You know, and that's the thing is all those different series. You know, I just think people should give them a chance and try reading, not just watching. I think that you get a lot more enjoyment out of it. I enjoy reading the Harry Potter books more than I do the movies, even if I like the movies. The books are way better.
That almost goes without saying for most of the time, because there's just so much extra that you can get out of the book than you can like a 2-hour, 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah. Well, and see, the thing is I appreciate movies just like I appreciate video games that have book series to them, right? That's one of the things, and I do apologize, but everything in my life tends to, at one point or another, it's like the 7 Steps to Kevin Bacon refers back to World of Warcraft. You know, it's just like, there are times where I'm in World of Warcraft when I played, and getting to come across something, a region, a monument, a location, a city, an event, that is from the books, that lines right up with it. Like the first time I saw Ironforge, you know, it's really cool to see it translated to a media outside of your head. And that's why I appreciate movies and TV series. Recent disappointment that I was really shocked in, Lemony Snicket's. Thought I was going to love it. It was horrible. The TV series.
Now, are you talking the new Netflix series?
Yeah, I couldn't get into it, man.
Because I've never read the books, and I know that there was like a movie that came out, I believe.
Yeah, there was a movie with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, right. And now they have the TV show with, or the Netflix series with Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah, and see, I love Neil Patrick Harris, and he was great in like, what was that, Dr. Horrible?
Yeah, Dr. Horrible sing-along vlog.
You know, and I've always thought he was a good actor in that sense. My wife and I were really excited to watch the series, right? But it was just... The movie had a good translation. Jim Carrey, it was poppy, it was going along, but it held the sinister pieces, the dark pieces that made you appreciate it, right? The TV show was just... I don't know. There was a feeling that just wasn't there to bind you to the concept. It just seemed flat, and it was disappointing. I felt like they tried too hard to make Neil Patrick Harris's character vile and hated. You didn't fall into it naturally. It felt forced, and so we stopped watching it. It just... You know, one of those things that didn't translate, you know, but there's plenty of things that translate really great, you know, like the Harry Potter movies. I thought that they were very entertaining. I think that the Lord of the Ring movies, a lot of people have their feelings on it. I personally love seeing the world that was created in books. Even if it's not to the T, it's still amazing to see it on screen.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for me, I love the Lord of the Rings movies, that trilogy, but man, the Hobbit series is one that I barely made it through.
Really?
And I mean, it just it dragged a lot. And my main issue with, because they added in stuff that you didn't see in the books, like you're reading them in the appendices, so like you're adding in all the Radagast the Brown.
Yes.
All the stuff that Gandalf is doing, and you know, that's fine, but then you have and that's my biggest thing is the dwarves. I loved when the character designs came out for The Hobbit, the first movie, they each had like an individual poster for each dwarf.
Yeah.
And the way that they designed and had each of those actors portray the dwarves was so cool and so interesting, and you only really got to know like 3 of them, which was Thorin, Fili, and Kili.
Yes.
That was it. Like, you didn't get to know Bomber. You didn't get to know, Balin or Dwalin.
Right.
And it's like, their style was so unique. Like, that's instantly, like, I want to know about, like, the big guy. I want to know about the guy with, like, the curled mustache.
I want to know how the dude got the hatchet in his head.
Right. Like, you want to know more about them. Like, give me more.
Yeah.
And they just, that's one of the big things that let me down is I understand obviously I've read the books, I've read all the Lord of the Rings stuff. I understand that the story is Bilbo and Thorin and their relationship and what's going on and setting everything up for Lord of the Rings. But at the same time, like, give me some backstory. Like, you created a new character for the movie, Tariel. You added in Legolas when Legolas wasn't there. You added, like, you did all this extra stuff, like the whole thing with Bard and, like, the Black Arrow and sneaking in and extending all this stuff. Give me some stuff about the other dwarves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they even went as far as to show how the two, trolls got there with that whole scene in the cooking them, and, they did all that, but it's like, you can't give us, I mean, we barely got backstory on any of the dwarves.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, is like, only the couple at the very beginning did you get some backstory on, and I don't know. But I still enjoyed the Hobbit series for what it was. But I agree with you on that. There's a lot of things that sometimes come over from books to movies that can be utterly irritating. And I think.
Well, I will tell you that there is a cut out there on the internet. You can find it, and it's called the Tolkien edit. And they took all three of the movies and cut it down to a literal, what happened in the books is what they put into the movie. And I think the movie is like between 3 or 4 hours long, like edited together.
Wow. And is it
like that barrel scene is all of like, I think a minute or two.
Right, because in the books, because even in the cartoon movie for the Hobbit,
right,
it wasn't all that it was in the new movie. You know what I mean? It was just the barrel ride away from the elves and.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I haven't made me think of that movie. I haven't seen that movie in a while.
I don't think I've seen it in. Holy cow! I mean, I remember watching it on VHS tape. That's the last time I've seen it.
Yeah, you start watching things like that, then you gotta start watching things like, Watership Down, Last Unicorn, Secret in Them.
Oh, my kids love The Last Unicorn.
It's a great movie. I actually want to see. They're supposed to be coming out with a comic book series, and I'm hoping it will eventually get translated into movies. Dark Crystal 2. But I used to love Dark Crystal. That was my movie when I was a kid, man.
Right.
Skeksis, Chamberlain, Garthams. So that I love that movie. We were watching on YouTube earlier today. I think it was on Facebook. Somebody had posted a video of, I guess, at a con that was dressed up like Chamberlain, and it looked really good. But,
I think I think I saw it either on your Facebook or someone else's, because that's what it was. Yeah, there's like somebody, like a costume designer had
you are
done
like
some
the
stuff.
Fastest draw in the West when it comes to likes, dude. It is amazing. Like, I will post something like, this is totally cool, boop, and it's like, liked. I'm like, how does he do that?
Well, I work from home, so I have one screen where I'm working and then another screen where I'm just trying to keep on top of stuff.
All right. Working from home is nice. I do appreciate that I get to do that at Microsoft. Get to work remote Monday and Fridays each week, so it's kind of nice because I can sit there and listen to my podcasts the day while I'm working, if I'm not on the phone with a customer troubleshooting and I'm just doing diagnostics analysis or something, I'll sit there and put on, some World of Warcraft, the instance, or I'll put on Guild Wars podcast. Sometimes I'll put on fan fiction story podcasts. I like to listen to those. Just different things. And it's nice because one thing I had never done until this year, like 2 months ago, I had listened to my very first audiobook.
Okay.
I feel stupid saying it, but it was amazing. It was weird, at first somebody reading to me, but it was kind of neat to sit there and listen to while I was working. So,
what was the book?
It was actually the Burning Legion book for World of Warcraft. Told you everything leads back to World of Warcraft. So, and it was really well done. It was interesting to hear all the different voices because the guy doing the reading, narration, whatever you call it, he would do the different voices for like Gul'dan and the demons and Sargoth, and so it was neat. Really kind of brought the book to the next level, and I was kind of saddened when it was done. There's more out there, but I don't know, man. If I'm going to pay for a book, I'm going to pay for a physical versus an audio every time, just because an audio is great, but a book I can take anywhere, and I don't have to depend on power to relive that adventure.
Exactly.
So, there's something to be said about the physical sometimes. I don't have physical movies anymore, or games are all digital, but when it comes to print, and you know what I mean? It's like, even my role-playing books, I prefer physical.
Oh, let me tell you. I mean, I know whenever we get Reese onto the episode with, the future episode with you, we'll be talking about role-playing games, but I love my role-playing books. I love, that I could pick it up and flip and read, but I get into the PDFs, and I do a lot of the Kickstarters or the Humble Bundles when they do, like, role-playing games, just to pick up those extra PDFs. I can't tell you how many times I just have so many PDFs that I've not touched because for some reason, role-playing books and PDFs, I can't do it, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I feel you. It's, that was one thing. Some of the guys at the role-playing table used them. Eric used them just religiously. And, Reese would use them as well, and Chris did. But Chris kind of did the hybrid. But I try. But I just, even with some of them have really good bookmarking in them. It's not the same. I like to be able to sit there and have it in front of me and look at it and get the feel of it and be able to, if I need to set it aside, I can set it aside. I can set things on it. I can stick bookmarks in it or little sticky notes in it. And yeah, some people are like, you can do that digitally. Yeah, that's true. But, what if I happen to be, out on my internet and it's on my OneDrive? Or what if I happen to be, at a bus stop and I don't want to read on a tiny screen? No, I'd rather carry my book with me, And,
and I think that's the one thing I don't like about the PDFs is more often than not, I'm not looking at it on my big monitor here. It'd be on like a Kindle or an iPad. And the constant scrolling up and down just to read one page is one of the most annoying things that I just don't like it.
Yeah. Well, and there's another side to it, though. One of the things that I like about carrying physical books is it's respect. I'm if I want to buy something, if I'm going to spend money on something that is an adventure, a world, an enjoyment of entertainment, right? And I'm going to put the effort to put money into it. It's because I appreciate what the people who built the book were doing. The artists, the publishers, the people who went into building it, the authors. So to me, here I am with my phone. I'm reading it, right? You're walking by. You see me just sitting there looking at a phone. But yet if I have my book and I'm looking at my book, not only does that book show free commercialization for somebody I don't have a problem promoting because I bothered to spend money on it, so why not share that with the world? But on top of it, it's also a great way to meet other people of like minds because they may suddenly go, oh, hey, is that a Numenera book? That's awesome. And then there's the second thing. I can pimp Reese and be like, yeah, did you know the second Numenera book, Strange, Reese did the artwork? You know, it opens up avenues. And you don't get that from a digital. You know what I mean? It's just, there's not the same social interaction, which is a silly thing to say when it comes to a book, because books generally are you and the book, but there is a social aspect to a book. And to me, digital loses that.
Exactly. And, I mean, that's how I met my original group of college role-playing buddies. Was I was taking a class, and I overheard two of the people talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and I saw that they had like little like patches on their backpacks, and is like, dude, let's talk about this. Or, you know, I could be walking around with my satchel of books or reading my Vampire the Masquerade books or whatever, and inevitably somebody would come up to me at some point, and I think like that is definitely something where PDFs are great, and I especially like with what Wizards of the Coast is doing now, releasing like a lot of like their back stuff, like from the TSR days and everything, as PDFs and stuff, because I mean they're not going to print them at this point, but it's nice to have somewhere. But yeah, like I think the only thing that holds me back on buying them is, for me, again, not being at the table for 6 years, it's hard to buy a book that I'm not going to use until I find a gaming group, and then maybe they're not playing what I bought.
Yeah, and I can feel you on that. And that's the thing is, like, you know, a lot of them, like you were saying, going out to more PDFs for the back stuff. And to me, I understand it. We're in a digital age, and I even make my living in it. But, for example, the Dungeons and Dragons Advanced D&D book, Against the Slave Lords. Do you remember that?
I don't remember it. When I got into D&D, realistically, like, I was buying books from the old school B. Dalton bookstore, which people probably have no idea what that is at this point. But my mom owned one of those little cart stores that were in the mall. Like, you would buy things off the cart.
Oh, okay.
And I'd have to be at the at the mall all day with her, and I'd end up inevitably at Barnes and Noble reading, or not Barnes and Noble, B. Dalton. So I bought like the revised 2nd edition rule book. I bought like the complete guide to like elves and the complete guide to like warriors or fighters or whatever. Like all those books. I didn't play D&D almost until like the end run of 2E before Wizards of the Coast bought it.
Okay.
So like I missed out on like all those epic like adventures or module. Like that whole module, like I had no clue what modules were until probably like 3.5, because at that point like the person running our 2E, and then when it became 3rd edition, it was all like his homebrew type stuff.
Gotcha. Well, and see, the reason I was bringing that one up is like we were talking about in the PDF. I have a copy of that book because I actually have a piece of artwork in it. And to me, had they released that only on PDF, you know, it would be rather disheartening to have only a PDF copy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the thing is that it stinks to see a lot of stuff going digital these days. I mean, some of it is great. Nobody really misses stacks of CDs, right? Nobody really misses trying to figure out where they're going to put their 15th version of Battlestar Galactica, the whole series, because there's been so many, and they're all great, but, you know, after a while,
Right.
all that stuff starts to add up, right? And having those digitally is nice because they're available anywhere to go. It's convenience. But that stuff's just a different kind of mindset from, the slowing down and reading a book and really appreciating that adventure and taking a break from, well, the system that's called life, and to me it's just, part of the reason I like gaming and fantasy and books and role-playing and being a geek, and I like that I get to, at the end of the day, share all that stuff with my kids. So
That's right. That's what it's all about.
oh, yeah.
For people that are listening to the podcast, usually people might have social media and stuff. I think you have a blog still going on, right? Or is it not tended to at this point?
I had the cheese logs going on for a while. I haven't really done anything with it in a while. It's still there, but it's really more or less not tended to these days.
Okay.
I will be actually starting up a new one here soon because I'm actually going to start doing some podcasts myself to put on my blog for Microsoft Intune, which is kind of related to what I do for work because I work for Microsoft Intune. But it's more of a technical than fantasy, mainly because, well, for you to do what you do as a podcaster is awesome and amazing, and it's something I want to do, and I tried in the past to do it based around things like World of Warcraft, things like that, but I think I need to get my feet wet with something technical first.
Okay.
Because I don't think that I really have the thinking on my feet mentality when it comes to hosting. It's one thing to be answering questions and talking.
Right.
It's a whole nother to be driving this baby. And, I have mad respect for the people like yourself and Jim who can do podcasts. That's why I was really excited to get to do this, was just because for once I get to do an actual podcast. So...
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.